And I think the physical is easy for everybody to see. They see you. They see your 190 to 125. They see your skin and bones. They see you lose your hair. But then throw on top of that the emotional. And then throw on top of that the financial. It's a struggle that people don't, unless you've either walked in those shoes or a family member, have a hard time kind of understanding what comes with that diagnosis. It encompasses your entire life.
Be Inspired podcast. Real stories from real people. Sharing stories of love and loss, struggles and perseverance, laughter and tears, and overcoming adversity.
The COVID-19 pandemic has had a negative impact in all aspects of life, but it's been a particularly negative impact to foundations and nonprofit organizations. Coming up today on Be Inspired, we're going to meet the founder of a foundation and how they've had to pivot to survive in a coronavirus world. Hi, I'm Bert Barron.
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
And we welcome you into a very special Be Inspired. And Lisa, it seems like these have been particularly very difficult times for those in the nonprofit and the foundation world. And we're going to meet a special guest with us today just to talk about what it's like to maintain a foundation and what's happening in the world today with coronavirus and COVID-19. I'm interested to learn how they're persevering.
Yeah, tough. It's a tough go for all of them, for sure.
It is. And our guest today is Dave Caldarella, who is the founder of David's Dream and Believe Cancer Foundation. David, welcome. It's great to have you on Be Inspired today.
Thanks for having me. Excited to be here with you guys.
I guess we'll take the story from the beginning. Yourself a cancer survivor?
Yes.
Take us back and walk us through the diagnosis and bring us up.
Sure. So in 2010 or 2009, I was laid off from a construction job. It was when the market tanked and real estate was not so good, and loved the warm weather, loved being near the water, and just figured it was an opportune time to pick up and leave. And left my home in Manahawkin, New Jersey, and actually moved to Florida. And I said to myself, I'll figure it out when I get there. And about 6 months in, I was about 2 weeks away from joining an officer program in the Coast Guard. Wow. All my paperwork had gone through, was approved, was going for my physical 2 weeks later. Was out to dinner, came home, and had some trouble swallowing. And felt like something was stuck in the back of my throat, drinking water, just didn't get better. And the next day I was going up to the beach and noticed a lump on the right side of my neck that quickly. I hadn't been home for a while, and my parents still lived in Manahawkin, so does my sister, her husband, and my 2 nieces and nephew. So I was like, you know what, it's around Easter, let me fly home. I'll get this little thing checked out, sore throat, and never made it back to Florida. Within a week, biopsy had come back cancer, and a couple days after that, I heard it was stage 4 head and neck cancer. And that was pretty much it. A friend of mine got an airplane ticket, or we got him an airplane ticket. He flew down to Florida, packed up my entire apartment, put it in my car, and drove it home. And then we started a whole program of 4 surgeries, radiation, chemo, and all of 2010 was basically me fighting for my life.
It's amazing how within 1 week span, your whole life changes. And here you are thinking you're going one way, sailing off with the Coast Guard, and boy, life had other plans for you.
Yeah.
When someone reads your story, David, and you can read about it in Dave's Foundation on the website, there's an incredible story of David's journey, which I think most people, I don't know if I could have gone through what you went through. You say 4 surgeries, but they were intense surgeries. Yeah. And tell us what that was like from the beginning on?
Yeah, I think for head and neck cancer diagnoses for patients, your mouth is compromised. So eating becomes a real struggle. And then you throw on top of it radiation and chemo. I ended up with second-degree burns on my neck. My mouth was a war zone, to the point where 3 months in, I had to get a tube in my stomach so that I could get feedings through the tube in my stomach. I was healthy. Right before I left to fly home, I had just run a 10K, my best 10K time. Everything, again, was looking good for the Coast Guard. And when I got home at 190 pounds, 4 months later, I was 125. Looking in the mirror, all you see is skin and bones. And that's, I think a little different with head and neck is that the mouth is compromised and that it's tough to get any substance down. And, on top of that, when you come out of the surgeries, like you said, Lisa, I didn't have time to heal after the surgeries because I had bronchitis, I had kidney stones. So I was in the hospital even during that time, and then 30 days is your benchmark for anybody. Radiation and chemo starts on that day, whether you're, feeling better or not. And I wasn't. I was actually at a deficit, and I just started going even further downhill.
How long were you in the hospital, David?
So radiation and chemo was 6 full weeks every day. Chemo was once a week. Radiation was every single day. And towards the last 2 weeks of treatment, I was actually we called it my home away from home. I was on the 10th floor at Thomas Jefferson Hospital, and they would put me in a wheelchair, wheel me down for the treatments, wheel me back up because I was in such poor shape.
There was a time when David was going through the treatments that he would literally count the seconds. And Bert, I know if you're like me, or most people worry about, am I okay? I think about sometimes if I ever got a cancer diagnosis, how would I handle it? Sure. Do you think that?
Yeah, and when to come out of the box, stage 4, the first thing that would probably go through my mind, and maybe the same for you, Dave, is, there's no stage 5 for a reason. So facing that and other things that were happening in your life, where'd you get the inspiration to just keep on fighting? It had to come from somewhere.
Yeah, so the second day, I was going for a PET scan, and they give you the iodine to go through your body to see if it had spread. And I was sitting in a lazy boy at the time, waiting to go in for the PET scan. And, I don't have kids of my own, but I have 2 nieces, Isabella and Sabrina, and my nephew, Tim. And they're the loves of my life. We've talked about them many times. And they are everything to me. And sitting there thinking about it was, like you said, stage 4 is not good. And in that moment, it was a pivot point. And it was, I understand that I may not make it, but I'm going to allow myself to be okay with that thought. I'm going to fight like hell and give everything I got not to go in that direction, but I have to be okay with it to accept all the outcomes. And I thought that allowed me to move forward. And in that moment, sitting there, second day after hearing I had cancer, was the day I started thinking I wanted to help other people who heard those words, "You have cancer." Didn't know how, didn't know what we were going to do, but my nieces and nephew were the inspiration. Because I thought, God willing, I'm going to be here for a very long time, but if I'm not, I want to leave something behind that they're going to be proud of me for, and look at their uncle and say, wow, he was a good person, and he looked out for other people. And that was really the inspiration.
I always find it amazing that the people that we have on our show, Bert, the first thing they all say when they're facing adversity is maybe not the first thought, but the second thought is, how can I help others?
Sure.
And that's just an incredible thing to do, because I don't know if I would have even had the, foresight to think of something like that. I mean, each surgery that you had, and by the way, your doctor sounds like an incredible surgeon. Each surgery was like 8 hours long, and you
Yeah.
had 4 of them.
Yeah.
That's tough.
Each one more difficult than the next.
Really?
And then you follow it up again with the radiation and chemo. It's tough. And I think the physical is easy for everybody to see. They see you. They see your 190 to 125. They see your skin and bones. They see you lose your hair. But then throw on top of that the emotional. And then throw on top of that the financial. It's a struggle that people don't, unless you've either walked in those shoes or a family member, have a hard time kind of understanding what comes with that diagnosis. It encompasses your entire life. It truly does.
And your family.
And your family's life, absolutely. There's so many, mental pictures that you kind of take along the way. And one is when I first heard the words, "you have cancer," it didn't even register. I was just focused on my mom and dad who were in the room. And I just saw my mom start to tear up. And that's what I didn't even, it didn't even register until later in the day when I went to my sister's and broke down. But in that moment, it was just about them and seeing it through their eyes and seeing how kind of the wind just left them, left their beings. And I think that was a stark reality for me, looking at it for them. The second one was laying on the bathroom floor. We have tile in my parents' house, and I moved back in with them to face the diagnosis. The tile floor of the bathroom gave me, some semblance of relief for even a minute or two. So I would lay on the bathroom floor in between getting sick and being generally feeling awful. And my mom putting a pillow up against the bathtub for my head and putting a blanket over me in the bathroom. And those two images, don't leave you. And then it also gets you to think about all of those other families and what they have to do. And even my sister and, having to tell my nieces and nephew that this is going to be tough and all that. It's a family, going through it together. Everybody feels it.
Yeah. And when you think about starting a foundation right away, it's like, well, we'll start small. That usually doesn't happen, right?
Usually that's the way it goes. And to think at some point, Dave, over the process of your treatment, was there one moment where you said, man, if I beat this, I'm going to spend the rest of my life helping other people?
Absolutely.
Did you have a moment like that in this journey?
Yeah, I think for my whole life, I think I've kind of been searching for that opportunity to serve something bigger. I just didn't find it. This became that.
It found you.
It found me. And I think, when we first set out with the foundation to help, just care about other people, it was really simple. It was, can we help, 1 or 2 people? It's 1 or 2 people that didn't get help prior to this. And it was about showing them that somebody cared. Because I remember when I was sick, my story got out there a little bit. I remember getting cards from temples and churches and schools, as far as Bergen County, North Jersey, all the way down to Ocean County where I lived, and just thought this, I knew my family and friends were going to be there. I knew that. But strangers just out of the blue that happened to hear and just wanted to send me encouragement. That was it. And that was the opportunity. We can use this to help other people.
That goes a long way. When something as simple as a handwritten get well card can do wonders for your...
I have at home still to this day, I have a leaf-size garbage bag full of cards.
Wow.
That I received. And every once in a while, if there's a bad day or I'm struggling, I'll go into the bag and pick out a couple cards and just read through them.
I thought I was the only one who kept all my cards.
That's just indicative as to how many people, Dave, wanted you to beat this thing.
That's right.
And are all happy that you're still with us. There's no doubt about it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
So, David, tell us, you started small. You had some good friends that wanted to help you with this foundation.
Yeah. So the other side of it, too, was when we started it, which was early on, I mean, sitting in that chair was the first thought, like, we want to help people. How can we help people? Group of friends I've known my entire life, the better part of 35, 40 years, came together around a kitchen table with my mom and dad sitting there in the middle of treatment, me not looking so well. But that was almost like our first board of directors meeting, and I got through, I think, about an hour of it before I had to go, lay down. But that's where it started. What are we going to do? What are we going to call this? Who are we going to help? And the initial thought process was, well, we'll help head and neck cancer patients. That's what you have, and that's who will help with this foundation. And then very quickly, maybe after 6 months, you think cancer is cancer, and then we just started helping everybody who was diagnosed with cancer. But the main thing, even while I was sick, working on the foundation gave me a respite from looking at the clock and wondering if I'm going to get to the next second or the next minute. So my parents would pass the second bedroom in their little, bungalow, and they'd see the light on, and it would be me on my phone at 2, 3, 4 in the morning. Who would be a board of director member? What would the foundation be called? How would we go about raising funds? But it took my mind off the clock.
Sure. And
off of, I'm in the process of possibly dying. So it gave me something to really, when you say work, every minute I wasn't in the hospital or getting treatment or, trying to get a smoothie down or something like, I was working on the foundation.
Well, when we come back, we'll learn more about David's Dream and Believe Cancer Foundation from the founder and cancer survivor, Dave Caldarella, when Be Inspired continues.
Moving is difficult. At Lowe's, it doesn't have to be. For all of your residential and commercial moving needs, contact 732-775-4118 or get a free FaceTime estimate. Lowe's, proudly serving New Jersey for over 96 years. IgA Nephropathy Foundation of America is a patient-centric organization dedicated to finding a cure and better treatment options for IgA kidney disease. If you or someone you know was recently diagnosed or to donate, please visit IGAN.org. In this new day and age of online meetings and presentations, you need the best team at the ready. Whether broadcasting your Zoom meetings to Facebook Live or live streaming a fundraiser event, SIRREEL Streaming Services, with over 10 years of experience, can add confidence to your next live stream event. Call or text 646-498-8888 or visit sir-reel.com. Feeling stuck with your health goals? Michelle Weber Integrated Fitness and Lifestyle Design specializes in integrating simple daily routines to get you moving towards strengthening your core and boosting immunity and resiliency. With over 15 years experience, let Michelle's team help you reach your fitness and lifestyle goals by visiting michelleweber.com or on Facebook at Michelle Weber Lifestyle.
Welcome back to Be Inspired. Our guest is Dave Caldarella, who is the founder of David's Dream and Believe Cancer Foundation. And Dave, before the break, we were talking about the early days of the foundation and some of the work that it's accomplishing now. When you're talking about your story about how you went to Florida and were going to work in the Coast Guard, and I noticed the foundation with a very cool life preserver logo, and it kind of has a double meaning where this foundation saves lives and preserves lives, but getting the foundation off the ground, I'm sure there were obstacles, but talk about what it took to kind of get some momentum going with that.
Yeah, so even with the logo, one of my friends who came together and came to my aid in starting it is an architect and a fantastic artist. And I just mentioned two things. A bunch of us were lifeguards on Long Beach Island growing up. And then also the lighthouse, Old Barney, in Barnegat Light. And those couple days in 2010 when I was feeling halfway okay, I would actually drive over to the island and physically put my hand on the lighthouse. And it was something about the strength, even just a minute or two, I couldn't stay long, but just being there, the water, everything. And he came up with the logo for us. And then as far as, events and everything, it was a modest goal, such a modest goal to help one or two families that we just thought we could do anything, a pizza party. And our first event in December of 2010, I was a couple months out of treatment and surgeries, had just gotten over bronchitis, and friends put together a pizza party. And that one pizza party, I want to say, raised $15,000.
Wow.
And
That's a lot of pizza.
A lot of good friends. And the money went right back out to families in need of help with groceries, rental assistance. And that's where we started really honing in on the mission and who we wanted to help and what we could do with the money. And very quickly it became, whether it's a husband or wife taking off from work to take care of the other, or God forbid, in the case of a child, one or both of the parents are taking off to take care of the child, so many things fall behind. And even in my own case, 3 months after hearing I was no evidence of disease, happiest day of my life, 3 months later, I was sitting in an attorney's office filing for bankruptcy. And that's the reality of a diagnosis for many, many families. So whether it's rent, mortgage assistance, utilities, groceries, prescriptions, even transportation, getting to and from the doctor. We really honed in on those needs at first. And the first, 4 years, we probably helped, maybe 300 families with 200,000
Wow.
in donations. And happy to report, and this is solely with the support of an incredible community in the LBI region, that today we're over 1,700 families and $1.5 million.
The little engine that could,
Yeah.
right? And now with the COVID crisis, I know your David's Dream and Believe Cancer Foundation has suffered a loss, as Bert, you were saying, so many nonprofits, and it's so sad.
Yeah, it's kind of like this pandemic, unfortunately, has hit the pause button on every aspect of our lives. And when people don't have money to give, unfortunately, it's foundations and nonprofits that really kind of feel it just as bad, if not worse, than everybody else. But talk about some things that you're doing to stay in there and be able to help people.
Sure. So I think the biggest thing is when the pandemic hit, I think it was within a couple days, I went to our board of directors, and right now the foundation has 13 board of director members, a patient advocate group, former patients that are now helping our current patients, and also an advisory board, all people that give their time and help with the foundation. So there is a network of people helping this. And a couple days into the pandemic, I requested the board lay me off. It's always been important to the entire foundation, all the board of directors, that we are good stewards of people's donations, right? We want to make sure that the highest amount goes back to the people who desperately need it. So I went out for 2.5 months, and then we were approved for a small PPP loan, which was great. And we're coming up on the end of the PPP loan at the end of this month, at which time there's a likelihood I might have to go back out on unemployment. And what we've tried to do is reach out to, especially with no in-person events, because a lot of our families are, like myself, immune compromised. So it's tough for us to go out. We need to be careful. So we've done some things online. We did a Sing for Hope online campaign where artists who have done things for the foundation did a concert every Friday night for 10 weeks. And people listened to the concert and were able to donate.
Sure.
Worked out great. And one of the other things is we have a local mortgage company, Equity Prime New Jersey, in Manahawkin. And for 5 years now, they've done $25 for every closed loan out of that office gets donated back to the foundation. Well, in little over 4 years, that grew to almost $100,000.
Wow.
When the pandemic hit, they came to us and said, we're doing okay. We know you're not. And from March to June, those 4 months, we're down about 70 to 75%. They said, we're going to raise our donation from $25 to $100
Wow.
per closed loan.
That's
The first
awesome.
donation was $16,000 for the month of May. June was $15,500. July was $17,800.
Fantastic.
It's the way we were able to stem the tide with partners like that. And it's really helped us to still be able to, not to the level, like last year we helped close to 450 families alone, and close to 500,000 just last year. This year we know it's different for everybody, but we're still able to help some families. So I think right now we're about 75 families with about 75,000 out to them in donations.
That is fantastic. Bert, you were saying before how you reinvent things during the pandemic, and you have to learn to, like the online concerts. I watched a few of them myself, and it's not really what we would want to do, and it's not as fun as getting
Right.
together in person, but you know, when you have to make a little bit of lemonade out of lemons, and right now we're dealing with that. So
Right.
tell us about the families in New Jersey, David.
Yeah.
Did they come to you and tell you their story or contact your foundation?
Yeah, so they're the reason. They're everything. I think the biggest thing for me is in just wanting to give, you don't realize how much you're receiving. And these families who are just inspirations, every single one of them, some of which who are now board of directors, and advocates and advisory board members. They are the reason. When I send emails to the board or when we're at events, we always talk about they are our everything. They're our mission. And they're the ones who, whether there's children or a parent, they wake up every day, know what's ahead of them, and continue on. And it's a fight some lose. When we first started, one of the things, we just didn't think of was how many funerals I would end up having to go to. Because, you help 450 families in 1 year, like last year. The reality is that some families aren't as lucky as me. And I get very close to a lot of the families, and it's difficult.
You can tell you're very close. You're like a family. You're within itself, your foundation.
Yeah, the
and
dream family,
connection.
we call ourselves.
The dream.
Dave, you've overcome incredible odds just to get to this point in your life. When someone asks you for some inspiration and some guidance in helping them in a similar battle that you went through, where does that conversation kind of begin?
Yeah, so I think when I'm in somebody's living room, I've been in living rooms with little kids running around watching Frozen in the background when the child was sick. I've been in care facilities where a spouse is dying. And I just try to be there. I think be there. I think, empathy is something in today's world, we could use a lot more of. Specifically, I remember a couple, Lauren and Bill, and being at a facility, and Lauren was not doing well, and holding her hand, and allowing Bill the opportunity to go get something to eat because he was at his wife's bed, every second of the day, and being there for both of them, and now being there for him still, and being there for his kids. It doesn't stop, when a diagnosis ends, or when, treatment ends, the cancer is still there, in some aspect. If a parent isn't here, or God forbid a child loses their life, that family is feeling that for the rest of their lives.
Right.
And we say that's where the family. We talk about a beacon of hope. And I think those families would even tell you that the financial assistance is phenomenal, but the hope.
Right.
The hope and the family atmosphere that you provide means so much more to us than any dollar amount you could ever give to us.
I think just looking at David, a stage 4 head and neck cancer survivor, gives anyone hope, right?
No question.
I know, because I would be scared to death. I'm never going to, that's just right away. I think that the fear must be something that is just envelops you.
Yeah.
When you first hear that diagnosis, and here you walk in, how many years are you a survivor now?
This is 10.
Wow, that's awesome.
This is 10. Thank you.
That is fantastic.
Thank you.
God bless you, and so happy
Yes.
to hear that. And your nieces and your nephew, they
Yes.
must be older now, and they say, I got the coolest uncle, David, right?
It's cool. It's been a fun journey with them. One of the biggest things that we do is we have student groups. So there's groups at some of the local middle schools, elementary schools, high schools. We even do stuff with Stockton University. My nephew, nieces are starting to come through some of those groups now.
Wow.
And my middle niece recently, she's in high school now, but recently served as president of the middle school group. And just a huge,
Yeah.
I remember looking at her in the crowd during one of my speeches and just getting teary that, they were the impetus. They were, I wanted to leave something behind. God forbid I didn't make it through. And there she is. And now she's president of one of our clubs.
Full circle.
Just awesome.
And to watch them grow up has got to be just incredibly rewarding. Dave, where can people go to get some more information about the foundation and activities, and maybe even getting involved and donating? What do they need to do?
Yeah, so if people could just go to the website, davidsdreamandbelieve.org, and you'll see information on there as far as even grant applications for patients. A lot of the hospitals will reach out to us. The nurses know us very well. Some have my personal cell and will reach out if they have a desperate case that they need help with. And you'll see events on the website. God willing, we're back up and running with in-person events at some point in time.
Can't wait.
But you can find a lot of good information. Even our advocates, if there's a patient going through something now, we can link them with one of our patient advocates, so somebody's on their side, just even to listen, just to talk to them.
So important.
Yeah. So a website's really a wealth of knowledge
Just
for
a
everybody.
conduit sometimes. The services just goes such a long way.
Absolutely.
That's for sure. Dave Caldarella, founder of David's Dream and Believe Cancer Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us today on Be Inspired.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate you guys having me.
Thank you for coming, David.
I'm Bert Barron,
And I'm Lisa Anderson.
and thank you for joining us on Be Inspired.
Next on Be Inspired.
The one person that you see that you think you're going to spend the rest of your life with is gone. Like that. I was written up as a hero, and I didn't really feel like a hero. The abuse is something I haven't talked about at all to anybody, really. So this really is the first that I'm mentioning it, and it's It's a hard thing to talk about. You don't realize that this is happening to you until one day, you know, you're punched in the face and you're lying on the floor with a bloody nose and you think, how did it come to this?
Be Inspired with your hosts Bert Barron and Lisa Anderson Puleo. Directed by Rod Weber. Created and produced by Michael R. Doyle. Co-producers Bert Barron, Lisa Anderson Puleo, and Erwin Sternberg. Executive producers Rod Weber and Sean M. Sternberg. Editor Rebecca Gruber. Social media team Rebecca Gruber, John Franklin, and Luke Lograno. Filmed at New Beginnings Foundation, Wall Township, New Jersey. And thanks to our sponsors, Loewy's Moving Service, IgA Nephropathy Foundation of America, Michelle Weber Wellness, and SIRREEL Stream Services. Season 4 of Be Inspired is dedicated to the memory of Rob Izbicki, a guest of Season 2, who lost his life to cancer, and to his service to the community as a firefighter. Rob was a proud husband and loving father who cared deeply for his family and friends. Our prayers are with Rob's family during this time.